Welcome back to the podcast and to the latest instalment and the final edition of Loan Watch for the 24-25 season, our weekly series taking a look at the Chelsea youngsters on loan across the globe. And as I mentioned at the end of last episode, this week I will be declaring my number one pick, my top loanee for the 24-25 season. You guys already know who the top two contenders are. Well, actually, there might be three contenders. There might be a little bit of a wild card in there, but you're going to have to wait to the end of the episode to find out who my number one loan move is this season. Before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We are now available to listen to on Spotify as well, so make sure to go and give us a follow on there. And of course, at Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. But let's get straight into it. Loan moves for Chelsea 24-25. Not more successful than the French League. Strasbourg. We have started there virtually every single episode of Loan Watch this season, so it's only right that we start there again today. George Petrovic and Andrey Santos. Undoubtedly two of the most successful loan spells across Europe for any club, not just Chelsea. These guys are the top two. It is inarguable. You cannot make a case for anybody else having a more successful season than these two guys. Two players who were both on the fringes of Chelsea's squad at the start of last season, bearing in mind that George Petrovic had a chance. Andrey Santos, more of kind of a future prospect, hadn't really been given a run in the first team. We obviously saw him for the first time in a Chelsea shirt under Pochettino in pre-season in the USA, and I was sold immediately. I thought this was a guy that looked like a really, really good, deep-lying playmaker, ball winner. You know, he looked tough, he looked good on the ball, good off the ball, very industrious, very strong, very good in the tackle, but also very good going forward. You know, great distribution, great passing, able to get attacks going. And this season, he has just somehow added even more to his game. He got his first senior call-up to the Brazil squad under Carlo Ancelotti a couple of days ago, and Carlo Ancelotti said, I had not heard much about this guy. I've not seen very much of him. I've been with him for a week. He is the complete midfielder. There is no better compliment to give a midfielder, particularly a young midfielder. And not only has Andrey Santos got all of the technical attributes, the technical aspects that you need to make you a top footballer at the top level, but he has shown through the fact that he has gone into an extremely young side. You know, let's just put that out there. Quick disclaimer. Chelsea may have the youngest side in the Premier League, but Strasbourg, I'm pretty sure, have the youngest average age in Europe. It's an extremely young, extremely inexperienced squad. And Andrey Santos, going in as a lone player, a loanee, took the captain's armband pretty early on. And that is a big responsibility for anybody in a team, you know, to be the leader, to be the backbone, the spine. To give it to someone so young is not unheard of, but virtually unheard of. To give it to someone so young on loan, someone who is not even a part of the club long term. Yes, Strasbourg might be part of Blueco, but Andrey Santos was never going to be staying at Strasbourg. The only way in which that would happen is if he didn't live up to his potential, and that way you're not going to be giving a player like him the captain's armband. But Andrey Santos went above and beyond this year. 10 league goals. He has added so much going forward to his game. He is a threat in the final third, off both feet, inside, in and out the box. He is able to strike them. He is able to cause a problem from set pieces. Scored quite a few goals with his head this season. This is a player that has come on leaps and bounds, and I know people will be saying, and have said, myself included, at multiple points this season, we've been looking at the Chelsea midfield, little bit of instability, could have done with a more consistent player. You know, Romeo Lavia, as fantastic as he is, hasn't been an ever-present like Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez this season. So we were kind of looking for that third point of the triangle, if you will, in that middle of the midfield. And a lot of people were saying that Andrey Santos should have been recalled in January. He was the guy. At the end of the day, we, achieved our goals without him. So it is kind of one of those where I think we can look back at it and say, I'm glad that we didn't. Whether Chelsea would have had a more successful end to the season, I don't know. You know, at that point, I think domestic cups weren't really something that we were kind of considering as a possibility. You know, it was kind of more of it would have been a happy coincidence. Maybe not a coincidence. It would have been fantastic if it had happened, but I don't think any Chelsea fan was fully expecting us to go out and win a domestic trophy this year. And having kept players like Petrovic and Andrey Santos in their positions at the clubs where they were doing so well, I think in hindsight is the best decision we've made all season. I think leaving Djordje Petrovic in January, and I were, again, another culprit. I definitely floated the idea of saying, should we bring Djordje Petrovic back, bearing in mind that Sanchez and Jorgensen, between the two of them, can't nail down that number one spot. And I've long said that Djordje Petrovic is our best current contracted option to be a number one next season. But similarly to Andrey Santos, Djordje Petrovic would not have developed, would not have become the player he is today if he had not spent last season with Strasbourg. And for that, I am eternally grateful. You can sit here and complain as a Chelsea fan about the owners, the model, the business that they do, the money that they've spent. A lot of what they've done has been beneficial. It's just a long-term system, a long-term plan. So a lot of these Chelsea fans that are, very flippant, very quick to complain, very reactionary. And I, fully don't want to distance myself from that. I can be incredibly reactionary as well. But I like to think with this club and with what we've done over the last 2-3 years, there has been more of a long-term play, long-term plan in place. And you do kind of understand how that would translate from a business perspective. Obviously, Todd Boehly, Clearlake and Co., when you're going into business, you need a 3 to 5 year plan. And that's clearly what they've kind of tried to do with Chelsea. We've hit the third year and we've started to achieve things. And they may well be things that the team 5 years ago wouldn't call achievements. The Conference League, qualifying for the Champions League. The team 5-6 years ago wouldn't have deemed these as achievements. But for Clearlake and Co., kind of starting from scratch in a new system, in a new sport, in a new country, in a new club, what we went through during COVID with Roman Abramovich, unprecedented. And the way in which we have developed some of these youngsters, I feel like Chelsea fans are starting to see signs of the future. And when you look at, particularly the other day, Ecuador versus Brazil, Esteval Willian, Andrey Santos getting their first senior call-ups to the Brazil team under Carlo Ancelotti. After the game, speaking with Kendry Paez, 17, 20 years old. These guys are the future of Chelsea, whether we like it or not. And I can understand there's a reluctant segment of the fan base, a sect that does want to still focus on the youth, Cobham Academy, bringing those players through, as well as mixing them with the leaders that we've had. Look, they threw the rule book out, Boehly and Co. And if these players, Djordje Petrovic, Andrey Santos, can come back into the fold now and have long, fruitful careers at Chelsea, you're not going to hear me complain. Because you look at Chelsea over the last 10 years, we've always had 30, 40 players out on loan. How many next ups have we heard? How many times did we hear the name Gael Kakuta when he was out on loan? Armando Broja when he was over at Vitesse. There have been a lot of Chelsea players that have had a lot of hype around them and it's never really materialised. So to see that this team, this ownership, this club is still invested in these young players for their own success as well as the club's success is a positive for me. And obviously Petrovic voted Strasbourg's Player of the Year. Andrey Santos, incredibly emotional Instagram post saying goodbye. They've made connections with this club and the gap has been bridged between Chelsea and Strasbourg. Earlier in the season, Strasbourg fans hated Clearlake and Co, hated Boehly. They were challenged. Last year, they were virtually relegation battling. This year, they were scrapping for European position. So it is chalk and cheese. And a lot of that does go down, credit to the manager, credit to the players. Like I said, extremely young group of players. And what they've done is fantastic. I think a great achievement for Strasbourg. Probably eclipses what Chelsea have achieved this season. But obviously, having those two figureheads in the team, it shows the importance of having, number one, a goalkeeper that you can rely on and a goalkeeper that can play out with his feet. And number two, it shows the importance of having leaders in the squad. And even though Chelsea don't have the oldest team, we may be potentially increasing the average age with, players like Mike Maignan, maybe a striker comes in, who knows? But this Chelsea team has got a few, I feel like Reece James, Enzo Fernandez have identified themselves as leaders. Levi Colwill identified themselves as leaders in this team. And I feel like the more personalities, the more strong leadership potential qualities that we can bring through, it will just, when you look at this Chelsea team as having very little Champions League experience, having that kind of mentality to get through big games, to do things when you are the underdog. That sort of underdog mentality is where we thrive. We've won both of our Champions Leagues being the underdog. And you know what? If Djordje Petrovic and Andrey Santos can both fit back into this Chelsea team next season, I'd be very, very happy. I know I mentioned Maignan there. I would be very surprised if Petrovic doesn't at least get a look in, because I feel like he's done more than enough at Strasbourg to justify him being our number one. Even if it is just for a season, let Penders go out on loan. Who knows what happens? But I personally feel number one and number two, not in that order, because like I said, you're going to have to wait till the end of the show to find out who number one is. But Djordje Petrovic and Andrey Santos, undoubtedly the most successful loan moves across Europe this year. Absolutely fantastic, and yeah, long may it continue. Staying in Europe and in the top leagues, we will move over to Italy, and a player who has had the complete opposite in terms of working his way back into this Chelsea team, Renato Vega. If you could define cutting your nose off to spite your face in a move, it would be Renato Vega asking to leave the club and go to Juventus in January. This is a guy that nobody had heard of prior to signing for Chelsea for 14 million from Basel. We bought him over, gave him a clear path of progression into the first team, gave him Conference League minutes, made him a starter in the cup competitions, gave him, pushed Ben Chilwell out the club to facilitate him at left back to play back up to Marc Cucurella, and he turned around and went, all this game time, this Portugal call up to the international team, you've done wonders for my career, but I don't really like playing left back. I want to play left centre back. Tear his contract up. He may have been, a steadfast part of the Juventus team. They may have achieved Champions League football. Whoopie-doo for them. He could have been a big part of this club. He could have been very, very connected to these fans. On the face of it, I'd say he has had a successful loan move for himself, in that he has found himself a move away. I would be very surprised if Chelsea don't look to sell him this summer for a minimal profit on the 14 mil that we made. It is no skin off our teeth, because at the end of the day, even though he kind of embedded himself in the fan base, he said all the right things early on. He did exactly the same when he went over to Juventus, and kind of shone a light on how naive some of us Chelsea fans may have been in committing and giving our heart to Renato Vega. But look, it's not a bad achievement to be part of a Juventus team that may not be the same Juventus team it was 5-10 years ago, but still a very big club, still a very prestigious club in Europe. If he does get a move back there, he's going to be playing in the Champions League next year. So good for him. A shame, I think, that it had to go down the way it did. But from what I've heard, Chelsea have no intention of bringing this guy back into the fold. He has severed his ties by telling us where he wanted to play. Another player who I do not see a future for, who has been in Italy this season, João Felix. And this is one that makes me a little bit more upset, because João Felix is a player that I backed, and I was really happy when he came back. I really, really liked watching him under Graham Potter, Frank Lampard. I know he didn't really get many games under the latter because he was on loan at the point. Lampard decided to focus on the players that would be with the team next season. But I think João Felix, in that miserable, miserable season, I'd argue that was probably the worst season of my life being a Chelsea fan. In that season, I feel like Enzo Fernandez and João Felix were the bright sparks. João Felix particularly was exciting. He was just a little bit different. He gave us a different dimension, and I've said multiple times on this podcast before, he's a luxury player, and that is a luxury that this Chelsea team can't afford. Obviously, we have Cole Palmer in that role. We're looking to bring in players like Esteban, Willian, Kendry Paez, who to an extent are luxury players. They don't really do the hard work, the industrious side, the getting back. You need a player, in a team of 11, you need to kind of highlight one or two, maybe two roles for those sorts of players. But in the Premier League, I'm very much, you get one. That is it. It is the number 10. He can do what he wants if he's good enough. Apart from that, everybody needs to do their jobs. João Felix just hasn't set the world alight wherever he's gone. Benfica, Barcelona, Chelsea, AC Milan. He's just struggled. He shows glimpses, which is the most frustrating thing for me. I'm pretty sure he scored in his first game for Inter Milan. He scored in the final two games as well. He has elements that I think, I watch him and I just think he could be a fantastic player. I think on the ball, with technical ability, second to none. I think if you look at all the players contracted to Chelsea currently, or as of last season, him and Nkunku are up there as technically the best. But in terms of application, when you look at him over 90 minutes, he just doesn't do it. He just goes missing for far too long. And, AC Milan fans have not fallen in love with him. It seems like they have no interest in keeping him at the club. Chelsea have no interest in bringing him back into the fold next season. From the rumours that I've heard, it looks like he might be going back to Benfica. I mean, it's a little bit early for a homecoming. What is he, 25, 26? But again, it just shows in today's market, you can pay such inflated values for potential for a player that might be great. And I'm a firm believer in CVs. Proof needs to be in the pudding. I need to know that you've done it in the Champions League if you want to be successful in the Champions League. When you're looking at Chelsea preparing a squad for next year, I want players who have played in that competition not just in the group stage, at the latter stages. I need players that know what it takes to go through the knockout stages. Obviously, we've got Reece James and Enzo Fernandez will understand that to an extent. There will be a few players in there that have progressed to latter stages of cup competitions, but on the whole, it's still a very, very inexperienced Chelsea side. And I feel like players like João Felix, we have so many of these fringe players. Will they, won't they, could they, should they? Yes, he should. There was a lot of financial footwork, legal loopholes to go through to get that Conor Gallagher deal done and João Felix to Chelsea. Obviously, Samuel Moradion was mixed up in all of that. Hearing rumours that Chelsea are still keeping tabs on him, I would have rather gone for a Moradion at this rate. But, in hindsight, look, at least we didn't pay 80, 90 million for him. At least it was only a 40, whatever it was, million fee. But yeah, unfortunately, João Felix, another player with great potential, but has just failed to live up to the hype in yet another top European league. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't see a way back for him at Chelsea. And another player that I don't see a way back for Chelsea, however, completely other side of the coin, because this is one that I think could, if he wanted to. But I just think with the personnel that we're bringing in, the way in which it was dealt with last season, I can't see Carney Chukwuemeka coming back. And I think Borussia Dortmund's a great place for him. I think the German league is a fantastic opportunity for young English players that don't get the game time that they may deserve at the clubs that they're playing. He's too good to go to a club that's not top six in the Prem, but he's not good enough to start for a top six club just yet. You look at players like Bellingham, Sancho, Bino Gittins, their career path of what they've done at Borussia Dortmund. I think it's the perfect place for him. I think he's a great technical player. Earlier in this season, another player that I was kind of looking at in and around January thinking, why are we looking to get rid of this guy? He is better than what we've got at the moment. He's better than Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. I don't know how we kept Kiernan Dewsbury Hall and got rid of Chukwuemeka. But this is a player that I see a big future for. Hopefully for England, hopefully in the club as well. But I think his best move right now is staying outside of England. I think to stay in Borussia Dortmund, they managed to qualify again for the Champions League next year. I think maybe he was used a little bit fleetingly at times because he was a lone player this season. And obviously, you do tend to want to use your own contracted players are going to be there for the long term. But Chukwuemeka is a player that I really hope does exceptionally well. I think he's a player we can make a little profit on as well. If I'm not mistaken, we signed him for 21 odd mil from Aston Villa. So to make a little bit of money on that, get him gone for 30, maybe use him as a make weight for Bino Gittins. He's not my number one choice, but if that's the direction that we're going, Carney Chukwuemeka could be used as a pretty nice make weight. And in that, players that we do need to get rid of. Let's bring it back to the Premier League and hit a big triple. Raheem Sterling at Arsenal, Kepa Arrizabalaga at Bournemouth, and Ben Chilwell at Crystal Palace. The ABCs of calamitous loan moves. Actually, you know what? It's unfair to categorise Kepa in that because Kepa actually had a fairly decent loan move at Bournemouth. I think he was their number one goalkeeper for the majority of the season. Bournemouth had an exceptional season. I think they finished 9th. Top half of the table finish for them is really, really good. He is that level of keeper. He found his level. He is that Ramsdale level. He's a good keeper playing for a He's that like Julio Cesar playing for QPR type vibes. You know what I'm saying? We were never going to recoup what we spent on Kepa Arrizabalaga. He's a good enough goalkeeper, but he's not good enough to do it at the top level. And with rumours coming out this week that Arsenal are going to snap up yet another one of our rejects for 5 million to play second fiddle to David Raya, I mean, look, Arsenal fans, I wish you all the luck in the world. If you've seen Raheem Sterling this season and gone, yeah, you know what, let's keep going back to Chelsea. After Willian, after Jorginho, after David Luiz, after Raheem Sterling, let's go back in for more Chelsea rejects. When will you learn? Your club is bummy. Yeah, we ain't here to talk about Arsenal, but that in itself stinks. I really hope Kepa Arrizabalaga goes to Arsenal, because that there means no domestic trophies, because you know he's going to start in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and he ain't going to win. If you go to a penalty shootout with Kepa, you ain't going to win that penalty shootout. But Raheem Sterling, 0 Premier League goals. I think 0 non-penalty goals all season in the Premier League for Arsenal. He came out giving it the big, and you're going to see the best of me. Arsenal fans were gassed. Oh, we signed him for free. You're paying his wages. Da-da-da. Yeah. You understand why we were so happy to get rid of him? You understand why we were so happy to see the back of this washed up guy? Get him to the MLS, get him to Saudi. I have nothing else to say on Raheem Sterling. This is just a player that cannot be kept at Chelsea this season. He needs his contract torn up. And another one that will just sow discontent if he doesn't get a move away straight away is Ben Chilwell. I've heard that Ben Chilwell could even be released from his contract in order to secure him a move away, because nobody wants to pay the wages that he's on. Nobody wants to pay Chelsea any money because he's absolute dog. Couldn't even nail down a starting position as Crystal Palace's left back. Come on, man. I know that they won the FA Cup, and hopefully Ben Chilwell gets a little bit of silverware out of that. But the fact that his career has gone so far and so quickly down the pan is alien to me. I don't understand how anybody can look at this guy and think that there's a player still in there. I think, way past it. Release him from his contract. £50 million down the drain. Yeah, actually, I say £50 million down the drain. He virtually repaid that fee in that Champions League winning season 2021. So yeah, I'm happy to let him leave quietly, quickly, just so long as he doesn't do a Romelu Lukaku and sit there sowing discontent in this Chelsea team. Because he did do a couple of interviews. I know he was fairly professional when he left, but he did do a couple of interviews where, it was really hard training on your own. Play better, mate. Be better. Not that hard. A player that I do feel a little bit more sorry for, though, is Leslie Ugo Chukwu, who obviously spent the season on loan at Southampton, started 3 of their 4 games in May, and ensured that they didn't finish the season with the joint lowest Premier League title, points total, sorry. He was, much like Kepa, I think he showed that he's a little bit of a cut above, to more of an extent of Kepa, because, Bournemouth are a lot better side than Southampton, obviously. And Leslie Ugo Chukwu was a bright spark in an otherwise fairly dull team. They got Tyler Diblin, they got a couple of good players in that Southampton side, but apart from that, it was a very flat, very boring season. It was one note all the way. You knew what was going to happen, and I feel like they only used, we've been talking about teams don't tend to use loanees. I feel like they only used Leslie Ugo Chukwu because they knew if they didn't, they were going to get battered. Leslie Ugo Chukwu had a great few games, but I do feel like that is a transfer that maybe Chelsea have passed him by. Obviously, we've got the signing of Dario Isugo coming in as a backup to Moises Caicedo. Don't know if he will play or if he'll go out on loan. I imagine he'll stay. But then, you've got Romeo Lavia, played his way into the team under Enzo Maresca. You've got players in the youth ranks, Keanu Dyer, that want to come through, Reggie Walsh that want to come through as well. And then you've got players that we've signed more recently, like Matisse Amugu, who just hasn't got minutes. And that seems like another one that will be, destined for a loan move next season. But unfortunately, I don't think I can see much of a future for Leslie Ugo Chukwu at Chelsea. Not anything to do with his quality, but I do feel like just the way in which this last season has gone, I feel like we have maybe bypassed him. But fingers crossed, and I have heard that he might be going over to Strasbourg on a sale rather than a loan. Fingers crossed it works out for him, because I do think there is a player there, and there is still a future ahead of him. Whether it's at Chelsea or elsewhere, who knows? But getting back over to the French league where he's a little bit more familiar, obviously having played with Rennes. But all in all, I will say I think it was a good season for Ugo Chukwu. I think he's developed as a player, and obviously having experience in a relegation battle will only improve him in the long term. Having been through that, having seen that adversity that he may not at other clubs, definitely a bonus for him. Moving down into the Championship now, and Alfie Gilchrist obviously had a fantastic season with Sheffield before a fairly long-term injury earlier this season. He came back to Cobham for a little bit of rehab. He did go back to Sheffield and feature in their final few games. However, apparently he did not feature in their playoff campaign. I didn't watch, obviously he didn't play the Sunderland game. I didn't watch the first one. But disappointing for him and for Sheffield. Obviously not to qualify, given that at Christmas they were pretty much nailed on. I would have said, if the two teams if I had to pick two teams, I would have said Leeds and Sheffield. But Gilchrist, I think, had a fantastic season. The only thing with him, I feel, is similarly to Ugo Chukwu, I feel like we may have bypassed him. I feel like with players like Josh Achimpong coming through this year, obviously Ish Samuel Smith as well, didn't get first team minutes but did get a call up to the bench. I feel like there are players in this Chelsea setup that are ready to step up. And, centre back alone, you've got Badiashile, Fofana, Levi, Colwill, Chalobah, Tosin. You've got a lot of players in there fighting for two spots. And then you look at the other players, the youth players like Achimpong coming through. I would expect them to get a loan move. I would expect him, to get a loan move next season. But same time, I think he's as ready as Gilchrist to play for Chelsea. Obviously, Gilchrist, having played in the Championship, that is fantastic experience for him. And the other thing I will say is, I think in terms of Enzo Maresca's system, Alfie Gilchrist isn't a player that Enzo Maresca's had the luxury of being able to use and see in the flesh, I don't believe. But he is a very, very good utilitarian player in that he can play 2-3 roles. He can do the inverted, he can do the centre mid, left centre back, left back, right centre back. He can do it all. So I feel like there is definitely a future for him at Chelsea. It will just be interesting to see if it's this season, whether we feel like he needs another loan move, maybe somewhere else in Europe or in the Premier League. But Alfie Gilchrist, I think, is another player that's had a fantastic season this year, a player that I was watching very closely, and fingers crossed still has a big future ahead of him at Chelsea. Another player that went on loan in the Championship, Zach Sturge. If I'm not mistaken, this was a January loan move because he was playing for the Dev squad earlier this season. He finished the season in Millwall's defence as they made a late bid for the Championship playoffs. He narrowly missed out on the playoffs after a final day defeat to promoted Burnley, but who obviously had Bashir Humphreys, who doesn't really count as a loan because it was an obligation to buy, but we can officially now say is a Burnley player. But yeah, Zach Sturge, a player that I think could have... I was going to say could have stayed at the development squad and could have got a few more games under his belt, but I do think it's important to throw these youngsters out as soon as they are in demand, as soon as they are ready. The earlier we can get them first team senior experience, players like Jimmy J. Morgan, Leo Castledine, Frankie Runham this year. There have been a lot of players this season who have spent 6 months or part of the season on loan, and you do feel like even though they haven't got the same output, the same minutes, you do feel like in terms of their development as a footballer, it's so important to send them out to the Championship, League One, League Two. And this loan move to Millwall, I think, very, very good matchup of obviously skill and ability in terms of Millwall. Lower sides in the Championship. I'd argue the Championship is as competitive, actually is more competitive than the Premier League. And I think the Championship is probably on par, maybe not with quality, but in terms of intensity and physicality, definitely on par with Germany, France, Italy, Spain, top leagues. I think I would much rather send a player from our development squad, a young player, into a league like the Championship than send them out to a Leipzig or an Ajax. I know these players are, these teams aren't, this is just hypothetical, but I'd much rather utilise the leagues that we have closer to us. And I think as many players as we can send to the Championship, let's get it done. The more that these players experience at a young age, the better they will be. Alex Matos, another one, obviously at loan at Oxford United in the Championship. Narrowly avoided relegation. I think they finished in 17th place. But he's another one. I feel like I don't know if we will see a future for him at Chelsea, because I do feel like centre midfield, as I mentioned, highly competitive, very, very, fought after position at the moment. And, you look at players like Dyer and Raksaki coming through this year, I'm not convinced that a couple of them might not be sold. It is a very, very saturated position for Chelsea at the moment. So as good as he is, Alex Matos, I think that may be one that maybe moved on, this summer. Caleb Wiley at Watford, bringing our championship round up to a close. Obviously, Caleb Wiley was at Strasbourg earlier in the season. He was kind of intermittently included in their games due to injuries, but then came over to Watford. Don't know whether it was the medical team or what, but he played a lot more in England than he did in France. Started their final 8 games, including the draw with Sheffield Wednesday at the start of May. Seems like he's settled in very, very well. Hopefully he will get another loan move back to Watford next season. Obviously he's familiar there, just kind of started to fit in, started to get some regular minutes. He's a player that was bought into Chelsea with not very much known about him. Left back, $4.5 million from MLS. It's all about the potential. I haven't seen very much of him this season, but it'll be interesting to see what he does if he does stay in the Championship next year, and how he will be able to kind of progress. Is one loan move, one season in the champ enough for him to then play back up to Cucurella? We will see. But someone who had, and I did mention earlier that there would be a wild card to the most successful loan move, and that would be Teddy Sharman-Lowe at Doncaster Rovers, mainly because, congratulations to them, they won the league. They won League Two, and Teddy Sharman-Lowe played every single minute of their league campaign. He was an ever-present between the sticks, and he was fantastic. I've already seen rumours and reports that there are multiple clubs interested in taking him permanently. Doncaster are one of them. Apparently they want to keep him on for next year in League One. The other team I think Portsmouth are interested in him. But great to see a young, talented goalkeeper. There are so many talented goalkeepers in this Chelsea youth setup that don't get their dues. And obviously fantastic to see him. If he's not going to succeed in the one position that we have available here, I'd like it to be elsewhere. So, players like Eddie Beach, Jack Austin, Luke Campbell, there's a lot of talented young goalkeepers in this setup. Hopefully Teddy Sharman-Lowe has shown what can happen from, one fantastic season out on loan. You fall in love with the place, they fall in love with you. He could be that again, for such a young player to get that experience in a senior team in League Two is unparalleled, and obviously he will be all the better for it. Another player who will have benefited from, I think it was just another second half of the season loan to Gillingham, was Jimmy J. Morgan. Great finisher, great striker for the Chelsea development squad, scored a few great goals. His movement's great. I think he's got a great range of finishing, and he scored 2 goals for Gillingham in 16 League Two appearances, which obviously doesn't, read fantastically, but I'd argue that it's a massive positive to get your first goals in senior football. So, yeah, Jimmy J. Morgan, another player that I think has got a great, exciting future ahead of him. Be interested to see whether he does come back with the development squad next season, whether they try to send him back out on loan. But that is the beauty of the Chelsea Academy of Cobham. We just have so many talented players that, the world's our oyster. That just about rounds it up. There are a couple more on there, but I think we're going to leave it there for now. This has been Loan Watch for the 24-25 season. My number one loan has been Andrey Santos. As much as I would love to have said Đorđe Petrović, having won the Strasbourg Player of the Year, was nailed on. Andrey Santos, to do what he did, to develop as a player as he did, and to do it as captain, as a loanee. I cannot sing this guy's praises enough. I really, really hope that there's a place for him in this Chelsea side. Just very quickly, my apologies that this didn't come sooner. This is the second time that I've recorded this video, which is why it may seem a little bit rushed, why I may have glossed over a couple of things. I did record this yesterday, but the audio file corrupted. So fingers crossed, when you're watching this right now, the audio is crystal clear. But technological issues aside, that does bring to a close our 24-25 Loan Watch series. This is a series that I will, of course, be doing next season as well, 25-26. We will be looking at all of the Chelsea youngsters going out on loan across the globe as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments, who have you been watching closely this year? Who are you going to be watching closely next year? Who would you argue is your best loanee of the season? Is it Đorđe Petrović? Is it Andrey Santos? And why? In the meantime, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, at Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram, on TikTok, and now available to listen to on Spotify. We'll be back very soon on Tuesday to bring you a new transfer episode. But until then, up the Chels.